Hi there, my name is Chuck Lindquist, and I want to welcome you to a series of talks introducing the Handbook of the World Mission Prayer League. I'm going to serve as your host, and we're going to spend just a few hours together. I have lived and worked under this handbook, under this document, almost my entire adult life. I served with my family in South America for many years and was involved in church planting and in leadership development. I worked in a Bible school and directed the school for some years in a kind of an Andean consortium of Bible schools. For 20 years, I've served as director of the World Mission Prayer League at our headquarters in Minneapolis. I'm retired now, but remain a part of the community. I know this document. I have lived with this document for a long time and in community with those who find in this document a kind of guiding light, a kind of world view, a kind of inspiration for the way that we live and work in the world. So we're going to be spending some time in the Handbook of the World Mission Prayer League. I hope that you have your own copy. And if you don't, write to our offices and we'll send you one. You'll also find it online, and we'll be able to download a copy that way. The first edition of this handbook was published in 1945. It was written by one of my predecessors, a guy by the name of Paul Lindell, who thought it important to kind of codify the adventure of life and mission that was emerging among a group of young people in particular, here in the Twin Cities area and around the upper Midwest. The current edition was drafted in 2015. So the Handbook of the World Mission Prayer League, I have often thought, is something like a rule. Many Christian communities have some kind of document standing kind of right at the heart of the organization. Way back in the first century, there was a community that we have come to know as the Qumran community. These were the folks that produced the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they had something that they called the Manual of Discipline. Here's a fragment of it that you can see. It looks a little bit the worse for wear, in my opinion. So they described what they thought important about the world and what they believed in terms of Jesus and his mission in the world, and what they thought about their role in all of these things in a kind of rule. Some years later, in the 6th century, St. Benedict produced a rule that has become, you might argue, one of the most important Christian documents ever produced. It has become the model and inspiration for rules that have guided many Christian communities all through the centuries. Some years later, St. Francis added a new dimension to this idea of a kind of rule. In the 13th century, he produced a rule for what we have come to know as the First Order, the Second Order, and the Third Order. The First Order of St. Francis was the order of men who pledged themselves to the discipline of Francis and his vision. The Second Order of Francis were the women, just the way they did things. They gathered around a woman named Clare. These first two orders had a kind of a rule that guided their life and community. They were celibate, they were single, they were kind of married to the church and mission. But then there were a whole bunch of lay people that were maybe already married, maybe already employed, maybe already had a career. Maybe they were business people or farmers or laborers of one kind or another. And they were also drawn to the vision of St. Francis. He produced a rule for them. They became known as the Third Order. And this document was produced by St. Francis as their rule, a rule that they could carry with them into their daily life as lay people in the church. It described the things that they thought in particular important, like taking the Lord's Supper, for example, and living a life of repentance, and personal prayer and self-denial and study and simplicity and work and obedience. It had 9 chapters, and the Third Order of St. Francis still ascribes to these values as their vision for authentic Christian life and ministry in the world. Well, our organization has this document at its center, and it's something like a rule. I mean, I don't want to make too much of it or give you the idea that we're kind of more than what we are. We're a very simple sort of Lutheran community, and yet we share in common with many, many Christian communities through the ages this kind of organizational principle. We have a rule standing at the center of our fellowship. You pick it up and you'll notice that there are 10 chapters in our handbook. So over the next few hours, we're going to be looking at these chapters. Chapters 1, 2, and 3 present a history of the World Mission Prayer League, as well as a description of our mission and our vision for life and ministry in the world. We're going to be spending quite a bit of time talking about the history of the organization. Our history, it goes back more than 100 years, and I think that you will find it interesting to trace out the various components that have come into the World Mission Prayer League as it exists today. We will spend also quite a bit of time talking about our statement of faith. Here in the handbook, it occupies only a couple of pages, and you will notice that it describes our fellowship as a Lutheran community in the mission of God. This may be language that you're not so familiar with. What does it mean to be Lutheran? We'll be spending some time talking about the Lutheran view of the world that animates our community. The next section, section 5 or chapter 5, concerns our practical structures for mission. We don't have a lecture prepared for this section. This is a section, perhaps more than any other in the handbook, that continues to evolve as we meet new challenges around the world. So you will learn more about our structures as you come into our offices and visit with our general director, my successor, and with our personnel office. They'll help you understand how we have structured the mission for the challenges in mission that face us today. Section 6, we will spend some time with. This concerns personnel, what kind of people the World Mission Prayer League is looking for, and how we prepare them to undertake life in our community. Next comes section 7, or chapter 7, concerning finances. And there we will describe what we have sometimes called the Wimple Way, or the Prayer League Way. And you'll see just here in the table of contents what it consists of. Our guiding principles begin with prayer. We'll spend a couple of sessions together talking about our financial policies and life. And then finally, we'll spend some time in sections 8, 9, and 10 concerning mission property, mission partnerships, and something that we call the heart of mission. This last chapter is a description of the kind of core of our vision for life and mission in the world. So if you had nothing better to do, you might pull out your Microsoft Excel and create a little spreadsheet and notice all the words that appear in the Handbook of the World Mission Prayer League, and then develop a little algorithm to tell you how many times those words are repeated, and try to get an idea that way for what the handbook is about and the kinds of things that it thinks important. If you had nothing better to do this afternoon, maybe you could do that. But you probably do have better things to do than that, so I've done that work for you. Here you will see a weighted depiction of the words that appear and the frequency with which they're repeated. You'll see that service and mission stand just at the heart of this document. You'll see that prayer is the way that we live out our service and mission. It issues in workers and fellowship and commitment and support. You'll see that what undergirds our service and mission in the world is a relationship with God in Jesus Christ. This is what fuels our community. Our members pray, they give, they go, they become involved because of their relationship with Jesus and his mission in the world. You should notice that the service and mission that appear in blue at the center of the screen really are not our service and mission. These are God's service and mission in the world. God himself is at work, and he has invited us to participate. So there you have a kind of a word map of the mission handbook. And it tells you already the kinds of ideas, the kinds of activities, the kinds of concepts that you're going to find repeated again and again throughout the document. Let me share with you a quote that I have come to like from a famous Swiss theologian and missiologist. It doesn't appear in the handbook, but it probably should. A guy by the name of Emil Brunner said, "The church exists by mission as a fire exists by burning." That is to say, if you've got some fire, you're going to find some burning. And if you have the people of God, you're going to find the mission of God at work. This is the idea that we find throbbing at the heart of our handbook. We find a kind of fire burning. It's the fire of the mission of God. We find a kind of flame at work. It's the flame of his activity in the world. And then we find a community of sisters and brothers like you and like me who are swept up in this cause and sent into the world in obedience to his calling and to participate in his mission. So now we're just going to look at the first couple of paragraphs of the handbook, and with that we'll conclude for today. Paragraph 1. This handbook has been prepared as a guide for the praying partners and the commissioned missionaries of the World Mission Prayer League. You should notice that if you are a member of the World Mission Prayer League, if you're a praying member of the World Mission Prayer League, this handbook is for you. It's kind of the rule of our third order, you might say. I mean, we've got like first and second order people that are professional missionaries and are committed to full-time service within our fellowship. And then we have third order people as well. They are our praying friends, our wider community. There are thousands and thousands of them all across the world, really. The handbook has been prepared for them as well as for our full-time workers. The handbook is comprised of 2 parts. There is a summary of the philosophy and vision and values at the core of our fellowship, and you're also going to find a summary of the structures that direct our life together. Okay, I guess that's the sort of thing that you might expect from a mission handbook. You should also notice in paragraph 3 that the handbook is a dynamic document open to ongoing revision. The handbook may be revised by action of the mission's home council, and we have revised that thing many, many times since its first drafting in 1945. Finally, paragraph 4, the handbook is complemented by several documents that are printed separately. You can ask for a copy of them from our offices. The mission's constitution, the mission's bylaws, and the mission's policy manual. This is something that continues to evolve. It's written and rewritten all the time. Our home council is currently at work in revising our policies once again. And you can ask for a copy of the current state-of-the-art from our home office. So that's as far as we're going to go today. I'm guessing that you're listening to these talks because someone at our home office has asked you to. Am I right? I'm guessing that you may have downloaded our handbook and maybe have read it through or at least taken a gander. And because someone in our home office has suggested that you do that. Okay, fair enough. I hope that as we talk about these things together, you're going to come to find this document as living and as meaningful as many in our community have found it to be through the years, and as I find it to be myself. This is more than just like words on paper. This is the story of God's life and work in our little community and through our little community in the world. You'll find in these pages our experience of God's faithfulness and God's calling in our lives. This document tells the story of how a group of some thousands have been themselves swept up in God's mission in the world and found some place in it. It'll be my prayer during these next hours together that you find a place in it too. So God's blessings on you. We'll see you again soon.